This wasn't a typical first date. It started with dinner, drinks, and ended with a severed leg washing up on the shore of Lake Michigan. 19-year-old Sade Robinson had her whole life ahead of her. A college student. A dreamer. Fighter. But one night in April 2024 she agreed to go out with a man she barely knew. Just hours later she disappeared, and what followed was so disturbing, even veteran homicide detectives called it one of the most gruesome cases they'd ever seen. From dismembered remains to a Netflix-inspired crime scene, and a courtroom filled with tears, rage, and chilling silence, this case stunned an entire nation. But the real horror? It wasn't just what happened. It was how carefully it was planned. This is the story of Maxwell Anderson and the terrifying final hours of Sade Robinson. And once you know the full truth, you'll never look at a normal night out the same again. It started like any ordinary night. 19-year-old Sade Robinson was full of energy and hope. A student at MATC in Milwaukee, she had dreams of joining the military. That evening, April 1, 2024, she agreed to go on a first date with Maxwell Anderson, a 33-year-old Navy veteran she'd recently met. They went out for burgers and drinks, laughed over cocktails, and later returned to his apartment in the city. The next day she didn't show up for work. She didn't answer texts. Friends and family started calling her phone. No response. Hours turned into panic. Something was off. The police were called. A missing persons report was filed. But nothing could prepare them for what came next. Just 24 hours later, a jogger spotted something horrifying at Warnemont Park on the shore of Lake Michigan. A severed human leg, cleanly cut, wearing a sock and shoe. Investigators confirmed it belonged to Sade Robinson. That same morning her car was found engulfed in flames behind a vacant building, the license plates burned but still partially visible. Surveillance footage showed a man, later identified as Anderson, walking away calmly from the vehicle, catching a bus like it was just another day. The first date was over. And Sade Robinson had vanished into pieces. But this was just the beginning of a horror story that would grip the entire country. Less than 24 hours after Sade disappeared, a jogger made a horrifying discovery. A severed human leg, still wearing a sock and shoe, had washed up at Warnemont Park, along the shores of Lake Michigan. Medical examiners quickly confirmed what everyone feared. The leg belonged to Sade Robinson. That same morning, firefighters responded to a vehicle fire behind a vacant building. The car was completely torched, but police traced it back to Sade. Surveillance footage showed a man walking away from the scene, casually boarding a bus. That man was Maxwell Anderson. By April 4th, just 3 days after the date, Anderson was arrested. But even that didn't stop the nightmare from unfolding. What investigators found next would reveal just how calculated and terrifying this crime truly was. The more police searched, the worse it got. Within days of Anderson's arrest, investigators began recovering more of Sade's remains. An arm, part of her torso, scattered across different parts of Milwaukee County. The brutal dismemberment was intentional and systematic. But it wasn't just what was found. It was where it led. Inside Anderson's home, investigators found disturbing signs: zip ties, bleach bottles, and an ominous setup in the basement, a space authorities would later describe as a makeshift sex dungeon. Although some of the blood recovered inside didn't match Sade, the scene painted a terrifying picture of what may have happened in her final moments. Even worse, prosecutors revealed that Anderson had been preparing. Days before the murder, he reportedly showed someone his basement, complete with tarps and restraints, saying he was getting ready for something special. It was a level of planning that shook the courtroom. And they weren't done yet. There was one detail that left everyone stunned. Prosecutors claimed Anderson had shown Sade an episode of the Netflix series Love, Death and Robots on the night of her death. The episode in question? A stylized, animated short about seduction, violence, and dismemberment. The parallels were impossible to ignore. Authorities believe Anderson mirrored what he watched, right down to how he dismembered Sade's body. While the defense argued that connection was speculative, prosecutors said the symbolism couldn't be coincidental. Anderson was obsessed with control. This wasn't impulsive rage. This was choreography, twisted, deliberate, and drawn from entertainment turned into horror. But if that was disturbing, what came next pushed the jury past the point of no return. The images on Anderson's phone told a story no one was ready for. Prosecutors introduced dozens of photos taken on the night of Sade's death. The first showed her alive, sitting calmly on Anderson's couch. Then she appeared unconscious. Then injured. Then the photo no one could erase from their minds. Anderson holding Sade's severed breast, smiling. One juror later said, "That was the moment it felt like a trophy. He didn't just do this, he celebrated it." The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Some jurors turned away. Others cried. The defense tried to suggest the photos were misinterpreted. But no one believed that. Not after seeing what Anderson had done. After just 90 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. Guilty on all counts: first-degree homicide, mutilation of a corpse, arson, and hiding a body. But this wasn't the end. The sentencing would bring one last emotional eruption, and the most powerful words yet from Sade's family. By the time Maxwell Anderson stood before the court on August 1, 2025, the verdict had already been delivered. But sentencing day wasn't about facts. It was about emotion. And this courtroom was overflowing with it. Judge Laura Crivello didn't hold back. "This case," she said, her voice sharp, "is one of the most horrific I've ever seen. There is no justice in this room today. Not for what you did to her." Sade Robinson's family filled the front row, clutching photos of her smiling face. They came prepared, not just to hear Anderson's sentence but to speak directly to him. Her mother, voice trembling with grief and rage, faced the man who took her daughter's life and said, "You plotted. You planned. You dismembered. And then you scattered my baby like trash across Milwaukee. You are a demon. Return him to hell." Then came Sade's father, standing tall, fighting back tears. "He should not be allowed to breathe after what he did. He lost every basic human right the moment he took my daughters." Anderson didn't look at them. He kept his eyes forward until the judge asked if he wanted to speak. He did. "Your Honor," he said quietly, "I did not commit these crimes. I intend to appeal and prove my innocence." The courtroom went still. No one responded. No one believed him. His defense attorney had asked for the possibility of parole, citing Anderson's past military service, a brain injury, and diagnosed ADHD. But Judge Crivello wasn't moved. "You are disconnected from reality," she told him. "There is no remorse, no humanity in you. I will never allow you to walk free." Sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 12.5 years for mutilation and arson. It was final. But for the family, justice wasn't the end. They were only getting started. For most families, a guilty verdict and a life sentence would be the end. But for Sade Robinson's loved ones, it was only the beginning. After the judge delivered the sentence, Sade's family didn't retreat in silence. They stood up. They spoke out. They made it clear, this wasn't just about one daughter. It was about every girl who's gone missing, every black woman whose case didn't make headlines. Sade's sister, voice shaking, read a letter from one of Sade's former teachers. She brought light into every room, the kind of student who made everyone better. Her loss is a hole in our entire community. Outside the courthouse, balloons in her favorite color, pink, were released into the sky. Community members gathered around murals painted in her honor. One read, "Say her name, Sade." Her mother, speaking through tears, told reporters, "My daughter solved her own case. She left behind every clue. We just had to follow her trail. Now we'll follow it to change laws, save lives, and fight for the women who never got this chance." The family has since filed a civil lawsuit, not only against Anderson, but also against establishments that allegedly served alcohol to him underage without ID checks. But that's not all. They're now pushing for a statewide task force in Wisconsin focused on missing and murdered black women, a crisis they say has been ignored far too long. This isn't just justice. It's a movement. And it's powered by Sade's memory. Even after the guilty verdict, even after the sentence was handed down, the case of Sade Robinson remains unfinished. Because not everything was found. Her head was never recovered. Despite extensive searches along Lake Michigan and multiple locations in Milwaukee County, investigators couldn't locate all of her remains. To this day, parts of Sade are still missing, physically and emotionally, for the people who loved her. The motive? Never confirmed. Prosecutors painted a picture of premeditated violence, possibly influenced by disturbing media. But Anderson never explained his actions. He offered no apology, no remorse. And now his lawyers say he will appeal the conviction, citing medical and mental health issues, traumatic brain injury, PTSD from his Navy service, ADHD, anxiety. They argue that he's not a monster, just a broken man. But the judge and the public saw something else. A man who lied. A man who planned. A man who smiled in a photo while holding what he'd taken from someone who trusted him. There's also the matter of sealed letters, documents sent to the court on Anderson's behalf. Most were never read aloud. No one knows what they said. No one knows who defended him or why. And while Anderson sits behind bars, the Robinson family prepares for another legal battle, a restitution hearing scheduled for September 2025. But no amount of money will bring their daughter back. There are still too many unanswered questions. And one terrifying truth remains. Sade Robinson went on a date and never came back. What began as a first date turned into a story that shook an entire city and left a family with scars that will never heal. Sade Robinson was 19. Smart, brave, ambitious. She said yes to what she thought was a normal night out. Instead, she met a man who had been planning something horrific. Maxwell Anderson didn't just take her life, he tried to erase it piece by piece. But he failed. Because her story didn't disappear. It ignited outrage. It inspired change. Her family turned pain into purpose, making sure Sade would never just be another headline. They fought for her, and in the end, through the heartbreak and horror, they made sure her voice was heard in every courtroom, every news station, and every community that followed the case. Anderson will spend the rest of his life behind bars. But that doesn't mean the danger is over. Because the truth is, cases like this happen more than we think. And not every victim gets justice. So if you've made it this far, ask yourself this. How many women have said yes to a simple date and never came home? And how many more will, if nothing changes? To watch more videos like this, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.